All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about something pretty interesting and very unexpected that I did not think I would be making a video on today, but it's definitely worth looking into here. Apparently, Microsoft admits that many PlayStation exclusives are better quality than those on Xbox, even going as far as to call them iconic. Now, obviously, this has to do with the ongoing Activision Blizzard acquisition. Microsoft is doing everything in their power to try to make this go through, while Sony is also doing everything in their power to try to stop this and potentially get it blocked. And so this, I have to say, is not the most surprising thing at this point, only because by now I think we are all aware that Sony and Microsoft are clearly willing to stoop down to certain levels that are, I guess they feel are required in order to get what they want from this. And so I figured we could just read a little bit here. It says Microsoft has admitted that Sony has more exclusive games that are better quality than its own. The statement comes in documents pertaining to Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard, which have just been released. In Microsoft's response to the CMA's issue statement, it claims the proposed merger is pro-competitive due to Sony standing as the dominant platform holder. Quote, in addition to being the dominant console provider, Sony is also a powerful game publisher. Sony is roughly equivalent in size to Activision and nearly double in size of Microsoft's game publishing business, end quote. Sony's exclusive first-party franchises, including God of War, The Last of Us, and the recently acquired Destiny 2, are described as, quote, iconic, end quote. Another quote here says there are over 280 exclusive first and third-party titles on PlayStation in 2021, nearly 5 times as many as on Xbox. Later in the document, to prove the merger would have no anti-competitive effect, Microsoft states, quote, Sony has more exclusive games than Microsoft, many of which are better quality, end quote. They also continue by saying both Sony and Nintendo's exclusive first-party games rank among the best-selling in Europe and worldwide. Current Sony exclusive content includes prominent first-party titles such as The Last of Us, Ghost of Tsushima, God of War, and Spider-Man. It also suggests that Sony has entered into arrangements with third-party publishers which require the exclusion of Xbox from the set of platforms these publishers can distribute their games on. This includes Final Fantasy VII Remake, Bloodborne, Final Fantasy XVI, and Silent Hill 2 Remake as examples. It's also claimed that console exclusives account for a higher percentage of global game sales for PlayStation than Xbox, though specific figures have been removed. It suggested for Nintendo these proportions would be even higher due to the importance of Nintendo's exclusive first-party portfolio. Quote, it is implausible that Sony, the leading console with more than a 2-to-1 lead, would be foreclosed as a result of not having access to a single franchise, end quote. Obviously, they are referring to Call of Duty. Microsoft also did make comments on Nintendo as well in their exclusive games, saying that they offer a broader range of mature content than Xbox. And so this was something that I definitely wanted to cover. And before I go any further, because yeah, it's pretty crazy. I have to admit, it's pretty crazy and kind of vindicating to hear Microsoft themselves come out and say the exact same thing that I personally have been saying for many years, and I'm sure many of you have as well. And it's actually really funny when you look back. I left the Xbox platform because of this exact reason. It was because Sony was producing these games that just looked so good. I knew I couldn't miss out on them, and they looked so high quality, and they were. And I haven't really looked back since. It's just so unexpected, I guess, in a way, to get to a point where Microsoft is out here saying these exact same things and basically agreeing with what we've been saying for a while now. Obviously, I don't think Microsoft wanted to do this, but they felt it necessary in order to try to convince regulators that they should be allowed to purchase Activision Blizzard. And I mean, there's no denying a lot of what Microsoft is saying here is true. The only thing from Microsoft's perspective here that I don't necessarily agree with is they're really, I think, kind of laying it on thick, making it seem like they haven't been trying to do many of the same things that Sony is, just with much worse results. That is important here. I think it maybe still does kind of help Microsoft's case, but to sit here and kind of, pretend that they haven't aggressively pursued exclusivity in the same way that Sony has over the years in an attempt to gain more market share is certainly a little bit disingenuous. But before anybody says anything, make no mistake, Sony is being just as, if not significantly more, disingenuous. And I honestly do not like this approach that Sony's taking. If we were to look at many of the things that Sony is saying in response, they look incredibly hypocritical. Sony is really going in hard about how they're afraid Microsoft might raise the price of games and their consoles in the future because of this. And it's like, I'm not sure how you could even be saying this, considering you did raise the price of your games and you did just recently raise the price of your console. It's a really bizarre look. Sony's also really desperately downplaying their strengths. They're downplaying something that they've clearly cared about for decades and they've tried to perfect, and that is their approach to exclusivity and exclusive content. I don't think anybody who has been following PlayStation for a while can deny that it's Sony's greatest strength, and they do not hide it. For a long time, they've kind of worn it as a badge of honor, and many of the fans have done the same thing. And many people will tell you that the reason why they go to PlayStation is for the exclusive games or because of the exclusive content. And I just think it's frankly kind of sad to see Sony coming out here and really trying hard to downplay their own success and what they've been doing, and really try to make it seem like it's not what it looks like, I guess you could say, in an attempt to keep Call of Duty. Let's face it, this is why Sony is kind of freaking out right now. It's for Call of Duty, and I think it's just not good. It's not a good look for Sony. It makes me kind of wish that Sony didn't rely so much on Call of Duty. And I'm going to be totally honest right now, I really don't care if we end up losing Call of Duty. I know a lot of PlayStation fans would. I understand that. I don't think we're going to, but all I've seen over the years is Sony, try to secure and lock down every little tiny exclusive they could when it comes to Call of Duty, whether it's for like an operator, a beta, and even stuff like double XP, which is absolutely ridiculous. And just the thought that this is the stuff Sony's spending money on, I'd much rather see them not be able to spend the money on that such, ridiculous nonsense like that, and actually put it towards other stuff that maybe would be much more meaningful to the PlayStation fan base. But I just have to highlight that Sony is absolutely not innocent here. While it is really funny and certainly ironic to be reading these statements from Microsoft, right now Sony is getting kind of clowned on the internet because of some of their responses to what's going on here. I do ultimately understand why Sony is so frustrated. It is difficult to kind of see a huge player like Microsoft just come in and say, hey, we're buying this entire publisher and this third party franchise that you make a ton of money off of and has been, very successful on your platform, and that you probably thought you could rely on forever, or at least not have to worry about it going away. We're now going to own that. We're your main competitor. It is very understandable why Sony would be so concerned. But as a PlayStation fan, personally, I would like to see Sony stop coming out here and trying so desperately to make it seem like they're not the dominant leader, that they're not that far ahead, that they're not really, all about the exclusivity in the way that Microsoft is highlighting. Frankly, I do have to agree with quite a few of the things that Microsoft is saying here, because as somebody who's been following PlayStation, yes, there's no doubt that Sony has been going in hard on exclusive content and giving me a lot of reasons to pay attention to the platform. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Just like I don't think it's a bad thing that Microsoft wants to do that as well. I'm not entirely thrilled with the way that Microsoft is going about it. I think that Microsoft is doing what they're doing right now because, as I said earlier, they did try to do it in the way that Sony did, but they just didn't find anywhere near the same type of success that Sony did, whether that's due to a lack of talent, a lack of management, or something else. It's hard to say, but there we go. We have Microsoft coming out and confirming what many PlayStation fans, I think, have been saying for a long time. And that is, simply put, Sony produces higher quality, better quality games than Microsoft does. And, I think that we've seen that over the years. I don't think that any Xbox fans were necessarily anticipating that Microsoft would be the ones to come out here and confirm this. It's one thing if MBG says it, it's one thing if some PlayStation fans on social media say it. It's even one thing if Sony themselves say it, but it's another thing entirely when Microsoft themselves say it. So at this point, I want you guys to leave your thoughts down below. What do you think about this ongoing situation? What do you think about Microsoft's comments here? I'll definitely be interested to see what you have to say. Leave the video a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Hit the bell notification icon, and feel free to share the video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.